every CEO needs to be spent with the marketers in their company. Like your job is sell, get the word out there, sell, find the next property, whatever it is. You're the revenue generator.
Mike, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, man. Thank you very much for having me. So excited to be here. There we go.
For sure. Yeah. So tell us real quick kind of about yourself and how you got involved in the world of real estate investing.
Yeah. So I am born and raised in Michigan. I have bought, fixed, and flipped over 90 homes at this point, and I'm 31 years old. And I currently own over 100 apartment rentals that pay us every single month with my partners and I. And I also help people start their flipping company if they want to build a $1 million fix and flip company like myself. And I started back, I bought my first piece of real estate when I was 19. So over a decade now. And the cool thing is I actually moved to South Carolina 2 years ago. So now I buy, fix, and flip houses, and I've never even seen them in person. And that's because we have a really good team and systems in place that allow me to do that.
Sweet, man. And why real estate? Of all the options out there, what made you decide that this was the route you wanted to take?
Good question. So I started a bunch of things. I actually started, I had my life and health license, and I was studying for my securities license when I was 18 years old, and I was selling life insurance and trying to do financial planning. And then I got my mortgage license, and that didn't work out. Then I got my real estate license, and then I sold t-shirts online. And I started an online thing for real estate agents for $100 a month. I tried, like, the end goal of having time freedom and money was always the same, but just how I would get there kind of changed. And then I barely graduated high school, so I was like, God, I'm not that smart. So, like, what is the lowest hanging fruit? And I found out 90% of millionaires are made through real estate. I said, all right, this is like all I got. Like maybe all these other businesses aren't working out. Maybe I'll give real estate all I got.
Well, solid, man. So then during some of your initial first flips, was there some deeper motivation behind what pushed you through some of those initial hurdles you had to hit?
Yeah. So there was an internal goal and an external goal that I had. So the internal goal was to make $100,000 a year and not have a job. Like, that was meant so much to me, because that can prove that, like, hey, I don't need a boss to make money. I am self-sufficient. And that would just help me, in the internal goal. And then the external goal was actually to help my father out. So my dad's a contractor, was a contractor. He was the guy, he did beautiful homes, but he was throwing up the cabinets and doing the trim and doing secret rooms and really cool, nice, beautiful woodworking. And I would see him come home, and he would leave at 6:30 in the morning, come home at 4:30 in the afternoon, and just like plop on the couch dead. Just exhausted from the day, right? And he was in his late 40s at that time. And I realized, I was like 21, 22, and I realized, like, you don't have till 65 to retire, right? I saw this, I'm like, God, could he do this for another, like, 17 years, waking up at, leaving the house at 6:30, coming home at 4, and just like plopping and throwing up 300-pound doors and cabinets. And I was like, dude, as a son, I just couldn't morally allow that, because I had the best parents in the world, and they taught me so much. I was like, if I could give back. So that was my external goal, is actually to help my dad. So at 24 years old, I made a bet with my dad. I said, okay, if you only work 20 hours a week, you don't do any physical labor, you just check on the contractors and check on the guys, make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, I will handle everything else. I will find the houses, I will sell the houses, I will raise the money, I will deal with the title companies, I will do literally everything else, work 70 hours a week, so that you only have to work 20 hours a week. And he was like, okay, you crazy kid, I don't think you'll be able to do it, but that's fine. My goal was to do it within 12 months. And I failed. I did it in 24 months. So it took me 2 years to reach that goal. And I'll never forget, it was the greatest feeling in the world when I was sitting in my dad's living room, and he was on the call with his guys, and he was telling them, I'm shutting down the construction business. Like, if you guys want to do flipping with us, that's great, but, I'm done, because he's been making over $100,000 a year and only working 20 hours a week. And that was the greatest feeling in the world. Like, I have had nice houses and boats and cars and all that, which is great, but I would sell that all in a heartbeat to not let that go. So that was like the number one motivator for me. That was my external factors to help out my parents.
No, that's an awesome story, man. Definitely some deeper motivation behind that, especially when family becomes involved. So with that experience, right, you're jumping into real estate. Why the fix and flip route? Why not the other routes possible? Why was it from some of the contracting background that you and your family had?
Yeah, so good question. So I needed a way to make a lot of money. Buying rentals is great long term. I didn't buy my first rental till I flipped 40 homes, right? Because I needed something that produced a lot of cash. I needed a cash machine. So there's things like called wholesaling, where you find deals for fix and flippers like myself, and you can just sell paper, which is a great way to do that. But like you said, we had the construction background with my dad. So, and I didn't know about wholesaling. I didn't know it. I just thought fix and flipping. I saw it on TV, so this makes sense. And I didn't know a lot of things when I got into it. There's so much information. We're so blessed that like when I got into it, there was no podcast back in 2011. I mean, maybe there were, but it wasn't a thing to listen to them like there are today. And so I needed something that created a lot of money to retire my dad and keep me out of a job, because I did not like having a job. So that's why I chose fix and flipping.
Understood. And within that first flip, what was kind of your major learning curve or hurdle you had to overcome to kind of push you forward to this next journey?
So there's a lot that you learn along the way. So my very, very first house, I bought it at 19 years old, and I bought it from working at McDonald's at 16, bussing tables at 17, waiting tables at 18 years old, and I saved up $14,500. And I bought a house back in 2012 for $67,000 as a foreclosure. Went in, I cleaned it up, and then I did the work myself. I was laying the tile in the bathroom. It took me 6 weeks to tile my own bathroom, and I hated every second of it. It did not look good. If I was a contractor, I would have fired myself. It was like the worst experience of my life. And I was like, okay, like if I'm going to make this work, I got to remove myself out of being a contractor, because I'm on YouTube trying to learn how to tile, and I hate it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it takes up so much time. So you got to learn where your strengths are in the business as well. So I quickly learned it's not a good use of my time for me to be doing the work myself. Like I would actually lose money, if I were to do it myself. So then on our first flip, I told Mike Sr., I sold my house, moved back home with mom and dad at 22 years old. I had $65,000 in my name. I bought another foreclosed house for $50,000. So now I got $15,000 in my name. I own this foreclosed house with $15,000. And I was like, hey, Mike Sr., I already bought this house. How about you invest in the rehab, which was $30,000. Have your guys go do it, and then we'll split the profits 50-50. Like I already took all the risk. It's easy layup for him. And that's how we started. He had his guys go in there. He did it. He invested $30,000. So we're into it for $80,000. We sold it for $140,000, and after closing costs, made like $50,000-$60,000, whatever it was. I was like, okay, cool. And really, what I learned was the second flip, because now I sold my first house and I sold a flip. And even Mike Sr., my dad's like, don't do flipping. It's not going to work out. And then it started working. He's like, oh, you're the man. You know how it works. And I was like, yeah, I am the man. I do know how it works. I know everything. And our second flip took us 9 months, and we made $9,000. Basically lost money for how much time and energy we put into this thing. And that's where I learned the most, is all the things looking back that I did. I replaced siding instead of painted it, and all these other things that I'm like, wow, I could have probably made 30-40 grand, but I only made 9,000, and it took me forever, and all the mistakes that I would have avoided now. So honestly, you learn the most, not from your successes, but from your failures, which help you in your future successes.
For sure. And some of that definitely seems like a lot of personal reflection in that regard. So from your experience with yourself as well as with your father, what do you feel like personally makes you good in the role that you're in, and possibly the role that he's in? How can we kind of help provide others a perspective of, hey, here's where you would best fit in this type of scenario?
Yeah, you know, it helped because I was very young. So for contractors to take me serious, I was 22 when I'm trying to flip houses, right? So it helped to have a guy who has had 20 years or so experience in the industry talking to contractors. And then I'm I'm a young guy. I can be on the computers. I can look for deals. So in our business, you don't just go like on Zillow or Realtor.com and find a house on there and buy it, fix it, and flip it, and make money. Out of 90 something houses I bought, only 3 ever were listed on the MLS or Zillow or Realtor.com. The rest were all direct to seller. So I had to learn marketing. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. I just did it. It was a couple $100,000 I've spent in just mailers. I send mail to people's houses. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, but I've generated millions of dollars by doing that and learning that skill and how to do copywriting and how the psychology of how the letter is supposed to read. And then your website for higher conversions. Like we do very well because our website is optimized for conversions. That's why we're better than the rest of our competition. So I am like the marketer in the business. I'm constantly looking for discounted houses and apartments. So that just kind of naturally became my skill. I don't mind being on the computer, constantly looking for deals and underwriting them and looking at what the after repaired value is when we're done putting a bunch of money into it. And reading contracts. I'm a part-time attorney, I feel like, with all these contracts that I read and write for real estate. And I don't mind doing that work. And I could, so that's where it started, is you kind of find your lane. Like Mike Sr., my father, is very good in the contracting world. And then I will do everything else. I'm willing to do everything else. So if you're listening to this and you're like, hey, how can I get started? Maybe you could partner with your uncle or someone, even a successful contractor. I have actually a lot of students of mine who are partnering with just successful contractors. And they're like, hey, I'll go find the deal, raise the money, do everything, and we'll split the profits. You go in and rehab the houses and make it so that I'm not spending my time on that. I'm spending my time looking for the next deal and selling our current deals. And I think that's a great way to get started as well.
And to your point of the market you're in is not based off of what you're going to find on the public side of things regarding just buying a house and whatnot. Do you feel like possibly the personality best fit for this role would be more of like a people person, someone who's willing to go out there and have these conversations to door knock, someone who's very much motivated in that aspect versus someone maybe better fit elsewhere, again, for investing strategy wise?
It's a good question. So I typically don't like talking to people. I sit at home. I don't look at properties. I like being home at my office. But in the beginning, I was forced to go out there. And honestly, the best people to go out there. So we brought on a partner, David, 2 years ago in our flipping company. So he's our boots on the ground. He's the one who's looking at properties and talking to sellers. And he is a computer science engineer. Not someone you'd think as a sales role job, right? Talking to people. He does not like it. He's actually extremely quiet and extremely honest. And people love him. It's so funny the compliments that this guy gets, because he is the quietest guy. He always wears sunglasses. He does not like talking to people. And he comes in their house and he's just analytical. He pulls out his calculator. He's like, this is what we can get you. And there's this gentleman that we bought a house from, and he's a retired veteran. And he told David, my partner, he's like, I feel like I met you in another life somewhere. Like, we connect so well together. And David's like, oh, cool. Thanks, man. Like, he's like so awkward about it. And I think that's so great because so many people love him because they're like, you're so honest. We just bought a house for $35,000 because it was a fire damaged home. And the lady spoke to him because he's like, he goes church with his family. He's a Catholic. He just became a Catholic. And she's like, hey, can we meet Sunday? He's like, oh, sorry, I can't meet Sunday. I'm going to church, a mass on Sunday. We can do Monday. And she's like, I sold you the house. I had an offer for $50,000 for the house. You guys offered me $35,000, but I sold to you because you were an upright guy and you had priorities of like, hey, I don't work on Sundays. I spend time with my family, go to mass. I'll see you on Monday. And she's like, that's why I sold you the house, even for $15,000 less. Right? So you'd be surprised. It's honestly the best listeners do well. If you just sit there and listen to people, it's funny. David, when he was connecting with that guy, I mean, he's like, all I did was sit there and listen to his war stories. And then he's like, I feel like I met you in another life. I love this guy, right? Just because he's quiet and sits there and listens. So I honestly think that's a very good skill to have.
Awesome. We appreciate that insight. That's definitely not something you get to hear very often. So in that regard, as you're kind of learning these strategies and kind of gaining your stride, where do you feel like was your biggest developmental step early on? And where do you feel like you're really having to focus now as you kind of grow and step into these larger boots?
You know, when I first got started, I didn't know, like I bought my first house, I had no idea what was behind drywall. Seriously, I didn't know it was 2x4s, 16 inches apart, some insulation wires and plumbing. Like I had zero idea. I was like, I'll go in there and I'll figure it out, whatever it is. Like I knew whatever hole I would dig myself into, I could dig myself out of. And in the very beginning, you are doing everything. I ran to Home Depot 3 times a day. I was, babysitting contractors, looking at houses, talking with realtors, like everything in my business. And then as you go up the ladder, you have to find what your skill sets are and also what brings in the most dollar amount to your business. So I, on my second flip, came up with the $75 an hour rule. So if a task costs less than $75 an hour, I would outsource it. I will not focus on tasks that cost less than $75 an hour. So that forces me, because when looking for deals and spending time on marketing and finding the next deal, we make about $37,444 per house, right? And I know that because I measure that. And so it is my goal to be looking for the next $37,000, right? And I look at how much time it takes that I invest in it, and my time is hundreds of dollars an hour. So why would I go do something that I could hire for $20, $30 an hour when I could go make hundreds of dollars to my company, right? And go work on acquiring the next discounted property. So where you're at in your business, you have to realize as you go up the ladder is like you have to be focused on, I read this book, it's called Ready, Fire, Aim. He's like 80% of every CEO needs to be spent with the marketers in their company. Like your job is sell. Get the word out there, sell, find the next property, whatever it is. You're the revenue generator, and then give all the task stuff, closing documents and paperwork, give that away. That's a $20 an hour job when I should be focused on the couple $100 an hour task that's going to create and support the $20 an hour job.
For sure. And if I can reiterate real quick, that essentially sounds like a major step that a lot of people need to take between continuing to see success versus possible failure is really being very aware of kind of that opportunity cost. What do you have in front of you, and is it worth more than for you to take steps back and do it yourself? Is that kind of essentially what we're getting at?
Yeah. And, there's like if you heard the 80-20 rule, like, 20% of your efforts bring in 80% of the results, and like just focus on that. And even it took me a while to let things fall by the wayside. And like, I used to check every single email that came in. I just caught up on emails from May 15th this morning. Hundreds of emails. Because I'm like, well, if it's burning down, they're going to call me enough to where, and my phone's always on Do Not Disturb. They're going to call me or text me enough to where it's like they get my attention, right? And just being okay with letting things kind of fall by the wayside a little bit to really focus on, like today, I just told you, he's got a 30 unit under contract this morning. So I'm calling inspectors, calling insurance, calling the mortgage broker, getting all that stuff. That is what's important. So if some paperwork that I forgot last month, that, some bill I forgot to pay, whatever it is, that's okay, because this is more important, right? Because this property is going to hopefully make us $1 million. So I'm going to focus on that and let other things fall by the wayside. It's just a maturity comes along with like realizing that. And it took me a long time. So I like the 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. That book, he talked about that, and I got a lot from that.
No, that's awesome. And to that point, it's one thing to say, right? Like, hey, yeah, the next step is to hand it off so you can do the high dollar, stuff. Mm-hmm. But talk to us about, what it takes to overcome like you're saying, the need to like want to be in every step of that, right? What did it take for you to eventually delegate tasks, bring on new team members? I mean, talk to us about that experience. So again, for somebody else, we can kind of take that as ourselves to take baby steps and work towards that.
So so when you take on responsibility, you will grow. And even like uncomfortable responsibility of like hiring someone else, because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm trying to pay my own bills, yet pay an employee, like what the heck? That's insane, right? I'll never forget that. So when we're hiring contractors, like for our flips, and we sell them on like, hey, you're not going to make as much per dollar an hour, maybe working with doing a custom kitchen, a bathroom for a client. But with us, you don't have to go bid jobs. Like we have a standardized pricing sheet for our materials and labor. You will always have work. You will always have money. You will never bid too much and not get the work, or bid too little and lose money on the job. You'll always have a good, consistent stream of, and get paid very well with us. So when we are hiring contractors, we have 3 full-time crews that we have that are constantly working on our houses. It is on my shoulders to keep them busy because they work with us all the time, and they have families and they have mortgages, right? So again, it is my job as the CEO or the entrepreneur or the business owner, whatever it is, to go find more $37,000 checks. It is morally irresponsible of me to be doing anything other than that, because I have to keep the wheels going and keep them fed of doing more houses so that their mortgages can be paid, so that their kids can be fed, and that they're taken care of because they do so much for me. So if I am out there raking the leaves at my flip, that is morally irresponsible. I should always and only be looking for the next deal.
And when did you feel like you needed that first employee? At what point was it? Was it just to a point where it was so obvious you needed somebody, or what was the giveaway that, hey, we got to bring somebody on?
No, you know what? It's honestly, so what I recommend everyone to do, here's all of the events I've been to. I've spent over $150,000 on self-education for real estate and marketing, outside of my $65,000 for my marketing degree that's useless. And I surround myself with people who I want to be like, where they're at financially, spiritually, and their personal life. And so I learned from other mentors. So I was at a point where I don't think you are ever at a point where you think you need to hire someone. I needed an outside force to tell me and look at our business and say, you can hire someone. They're like, it's $40,000, the position pays $40,000 a year to help with all the title company stuff. Cause that takes away, again, $20 an hour task that takes away from me, or I should be looking for the next deal on the phone with sellers. And he's like, just have a 6-month runway. You have $20,000 set aside. They get paid $40,000 a year, and do it. Right. And it was like, I'm so scared. I'm like, what? For the first year, the first 2 years, I paid myself $500 a week. And then I gave myself a raise to $700 a week, and then $900 a week. Right. Living off of nothing, just constantly reinvesting in the business. And it's very scary. But I also think it's very important to surround yourself with people who are at where you want to be, so then they can look at your business and tell you like, hey, you need to be doing X, Y, Z. Because if not, I would not be where I am today. I can tell you that. I would not have pushed myself as much. I wouldn't have hired someone. I probably would just be trying to be a solopreneur and just trying to do it myself.
Very cool, man. Again, it sounds like you've achieved some very great things. And as we kind of grow more into this, do you still feel like your route forward is going to be within the fix and flip atmosphere, or do you feel like you're going to slowly branch out into other areas?
Good question. So I will hopefully have this fix and flip company for the rest of my life. So like I said, I have a really good team in place. As entrepreneurs, we often get the shiny object syndrome, and I dealt with that. Maybe this is the cool next thing, right? And thank God it took me a long time, but I realized like there is no cool next thing. It's just doing the same thing over and over and over again without expecting results for a very long enough period of time. And then after a while, hopefully it works out. And so I flipped 40-something houses before I bought my first rental. And I did that. We became one of the largest flippers in Michigan before I bought my first rental. Because I see a lot of people, they will try to flip houses. They will try to wholesale houses. They'll try to buy rentals, try to buy Airbnb, and try to do all these different things and not super successful in any of them. So I am just going to focus on fix and flipping, like the internal need for myself and the external need for my family to make sure everyone's taken care of. I did not buy my first rental until my business got to a point to where we had Olivia, my office manager, and the systems in place where I was spending 10 hours a week on my fix and flip business. Then I can, because anything you start new is going to take focus. You're going to learn from ground zero and try to, figure it out. And you got the big learning curve you have to go through, and it's going to take a lot of time. So I made sure that my business could actually run without me or very little of my time before I started getting into rentals, because I didn't want to start getting into rentals and flip houses, and then I'm not spending enough time on the house flipping business. That's slowing down. Oh shoot, now my rentals are failing, and then everything just kind of collapses, right? I see a lot of investors actually go out of business from trying to grow too quick. That is like the number one reason why I see investors grow out of business, because they try to do too much too quick. So my fix and flip business now, 2 years ago, it's kind of crazy. I was actually offered $984,000 for my business because of the systems and processes we have in place. I was 28 years old when I got that offer. And I've never known of anyone who's really even sold a fix and flip business. I just took it to a broker, and they're like, I don't really understand. Then I showed them like everything we had, my standardized pricing sheet, our website, our presence, and how we have leads that come in. We're like, we just get discounted like everything we set up, and I can show anyone to do this, and how we, make hundreds of thousands of dollars per year, over, $700,000 per year in our business makes. So, and I declined the offer, which is kind of crazy. But I brought on a partner. So what I did is I brought on a partner, David, who I talked to you about, who's the computer science engineer, whatever that is. And so I brought him. So he does the day-to-day. He's talking to sellers. He's doing everything. And I only meet for 30 minutes on Monday and 30 minutes on Thursdays at 10 a.m. with my team. And we're going through all the properties we're buying, selling, rehabbing, any problems that we're going through. And I spend that time to then solve that and point them on like, hey, how to resolve it. So it really takes me about less than 5 hours per week. Hopefully, like I said, I can keep that business going forever. I haven't looked at a house in over 2 years. Actually 2 years, July 1st, I left. So next week, I left Michigan to South Carolina. So now then I focus on multifamily. We have been building out the team in place for that. And then, a year and a half ago, I've been begged. People have asked me, Mike, can you show me how to fix and flip houses? And I just had to say no along the way, because it's like, if you're in an airplane and they say like, put your oxygen mask on first before you help someone else. And I have a heart for helping other people, but I just knew like I needed to get my businesses in place to where I could help people, because it takes a lot of time, money, and energy to help other people with their business, especially starting from ground zero. So to answer your question, I hope to keep the flipping company going forever. It takes very little of my time. Multifamily I will do for the rest of my life. I do not see that going away. That is we'll just get into bigger and bigger properties, is because it's just very profitable. And then I hope to help as many people as possible. My goal for myself was to help 1 million people make $1 million through real estate. I've helped 3 make $1 million through real estate, and I've helped dozens of others quit their job or make hundreds of thousands of dollars. So my personal goal is to help 100 people make $1 million through real estate, which is crazy, because 10 years ago, my goal was to make 100,000. And then it was, it'll be cool if I become a millionaire someday. And then it's, hey, what if I help other people become millionaires? So that's like where it goes crazy.
And to kind of come full circle here, you touched a little bit on like the shiny objects, and they're like something that a lot of people will talk about at some point that they kind of go through and have to overcome. What about the imposter syndrome, right? It sounded like you started from ground zero and went all the way up, and right now you're talking multifamily, you're talking multi-million-dollar deals. What was it like to or did you experience the imposter syndrome? Is that something you had to work through?
Yes. In high school, I had a 2.2 GPA sophomore year. And then I worked at McDonald's at 16 years old, making $6.55 an hour next to the lady who was 65 years old, making 10 cents or 15 cents more an hour than me, living with 7 other elderly people, saving up $200 for her grandson's birthday. And I made a promise to myself I will not be in that position. It's okay to be broke when you're 16, but not okay when you're broke when you're 65. So I dealt with imposter syndrome. I was in special ed for reading and writing all the way up till high school. That's why I had a 2.2 GPA. I took school seriously, and I graduated with a 2.8 GPA. I tried to go for 3.0, but I failed. I took pre-algebra at a community college 3 times. I'm not a smart individual, but I will do the work and put in the work that's required. So yes, I dealt with imposter syndrome because I don't read well. I don't write well. I didn't know anyone rich growing up. My father was a carpenter. So why I say it's very important too to surround yourself with people who are successful. That's why I've literally been to this is honestly, I've moved and there's a bunch of these missing. I've been to 4 events this year. We're halfway through the year. I've actually hosted one in Key West, a real estate event. And I've been to 4 real estate events this year. I'm constantly surrounding myself with people who are at where I want to be. And the biggest takeaway from that is realizing, and not in a mean way, one of my first mentors, Don Costa, he flipped 100 houses per year in California. It's insane. And I shook his hand and I talked to him. And I was so nervous. I was oh my God, he's the Don. We call him the Don. And I shook his hand and I talked for 10, 15 minutes. And I realized he's not that smart. He's not an Elon Musk. He's just a hardworking individual. And that helped me realize, in being in a room of millionaires and multimillionaires and people own a bunch of real estate, I'm oh my gosh, I can do this too. And it was so helpful, and it helps with the imposter syndrome. And every single person, it's funny, we had an event in Key West. Every single person who presented at my event all had imposter syndrome. Some of them, Phil Blake, he was living in his mom's basement, making over $100,000 a year as an engineer, and just putting all his after time and hours into this real estate business. He was trying to wholesale houses. It took him 6 months to wholesale his first house. And then he was able to wholesale his first house while making $100,000 a year, living in his mom's basement in Detroit, Michigan, in probably a $50,000 house, right? Humbled himself. And he's I am going to figure this out. And a lot of people the most successful people I know had the imposter syndrome. So to get out of that, or to avoid it and overcome that, is to surround yourself with other people who are at where you want to be.
Those are obviously words that you mentioned that come from mentors or come from experience. So on that note, when do you feel is the time to turn to mentors, right? That can be something that's very daunting for someone to hear who hasn't even got started yet. Shoot, before I get started, do I even need a mentor? When do you feel was a good time for you to step into that mentorship route and to move forward with that?
I am very thankful I did it in the very beginning. So I would say that I do not mentor people who have never done a deal before, because that weeds out 97% of the population right there. If you have gone out and bought a deal and what's crazy? You're in the top. I heard this stat. If you own 3 rentals, you're in the top 5% of real estate investors in America. That's it. 3 rentals. That's all you need. That's how low the bar is. And I think it comes with a lot of because it's very scary. You're dealing with self-doubt. It's all in your head. It was what you're dealing with. So if you can buy your first deal as quick as possible and get through that, then I would say turn to mentorships, because then all you're going to do is look to level up and improve your business. But if you're too scared to even start a business, then you should not be hiring someone to help with your business. If that makes sense. In your first flip, your first deal is your hardest. The next 10 is harder than the first one. And then those 10 is harder than the next 100. We've done, should have just looked at my Dropbox. We have done over 99 projects. So we're getting close to that 100 number. And the last 30 of them I've never seen before. But the first 30 were, trust me, I promise you, were the hardest ones I've ever done in my life. The first one, I was scared out of my mind. So once you take action and you start really implementing, and you know yourself that, hey, I am an action taker, then look for a mentor as soon as possible, because what they're going to help you do is help you avoid of all these pitfalls and pains that you can go through, growing pains, and also push you farther than you thought you could, with hiring someone when they know that you are ready to do that, and spending money on marketing dollars, right? I was fighting my father. He was $300 a month is enough for marketing. And I was it's not. These big guys do bigger. We spend now $7,500 a month just on our single family residence business and marketing. We spend another $3,000 to $4,000 on multifamily. So we spend over $100,000 a year in marketing in our business. And If you're around small-minded people, that's like insane crazy. But then I'm around people where they're like, oh, we spend $500,000 a year. I'm like, oh, okay, well then mine's nothing, right? So it's all like a frame of reference.
Makes sense. So yeah, essentially forcing yourself to stumble through that first deal is a good way to get started and push you through that overcoming whatever's in your way, right? And at that point, mentorship really just starts fast tracking you on that route. Okay, now you're second, you're fourth, you're 10th, and you just kind of snowball essentially. Very cool. Well, awesome, man. Well, so in that regard, man, we've appreciated everything you said today. First off, let me get that out of the way. This has been awesome. But to that point, for someone who's wanting to learn more education-wise, do you have any items for them to look for in regards to ways to get to that first development, right? Get to that first sale. Do you have any education items for them?
Yeah, so I have some free resources for everyone who's listening. If you are interested in real estate, you can go to our website. Our company's Real Estate Wealth Builders, and our website is rewbuilders.com. So it's rewbuilders.com, Rew Builders. And on our website, there is a free resource tab. I have how to make $55,000 buying, fixing, and flipping a house, beginning to middle to end of me walking through the photos of how and you'll see like the cat poop and everything in the house, of how I estimated the rehab, what I thought in the beginning, what it actually came out to, what we sold the house for, how much money we made out, and that the photos after is like really cool training. And then if you're interested in apartments, how I made the training was $175,000 wholesaling a 28-unit apartment building. So I found a 28-unit apartment building that needed a ton of work. I found an investor who was willing to pay me $175,000 for finding that building. So I got paid $175,000 with, it's like the late night infomercial. No money, no credit, no nothing. But you do need knowledge for that and the skills to do that. So that's in there. That's free. We also have our free Facebook group, Real Estate Wealth Builders. We have over 1,500 members in there. I post in there every single day. I answer questions. It's like my giving back. And I love just documenting, because you'll learn just from oh, Mike's doing this and why I'm doing that. We bought this apartment building. We're turning studios into 2 bedrooms, and how that's going to increase the property's value by about $300,000 to $400,000, and so the numbers that. So you just learn passively through that. And then if you want to work with me one-on-one, there's a button on our website, Work with Mike, and go ahead and book a call with me if you want to replicate the business we built of our $1 million fix and flip business.
Awesome, man. And just kind of the last one here, since you've talked a lot about, your steps towards essentially moving into that CEO role versus again stepping less into the field. What's your favorite business book and why? What's gotten you kind of where your mindset is today?
I was just on the phone with my mother an hour ago telling her about these books. There's actually a gentleman, his name's Sam Zell. He just passed away last October. He was a billionaire. I liked him because he went to U of M in Michigan, where I'm from. And I am blanking on the book's name, but Sam Zell, I think it's Are You Serious? Or Am I Serious? Or Am I Being Too Subtle? That is the book name. Am I Being Too Subtle by Sam Zell. Amazing guy. He started from nothing. His parents came here from Poland during World War II, not speaking English. And within 11 hours of them landing, they were taking English classes, and he became a billionaire. So they were escaping from, I don't know if I said this, but World War II. So the Germans were actually blew up. He was on the last train that they blew up the railroad before the Germans came and invaded and destroyed the town. So if you ever think you have it bad, I promise you don't. It's funny. I moved 700 miles away from my business, and I was so scared. Then I heard that story, and I said, you know what? I can always drive back in 11 hours. It's not that bad. Why am I freaking out? So I love that Sam Zell one, and Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. That's a famous one. And I'll give you one more. Jack Canfield, The Success Principles. That's an amazing book. I've read that one 3 times. If you're an entrepreneur, it's not related to real estate or anything, but it's for business and overcoming obstacles and how to be creative. And I think you'll learn of how to be creative, because there's a lot of parables and stories of business owners going through a horrible situation and then they get themselves out. So that's The Success Principles by Jack Canfield.
Well, awesome, man. We'll definitely be sure to look into those. And to that point, we appreciate your time here today, man. And we wish you the best.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
If you enjoyed that episode, then make sure to check out episode 5 of the 5 to 9 podcast, where we interviewed Eddie Padron, a full-time cop who's made over $250,000 flipping houses on the side. Be sure to watch our YouTube Shorts, TikToks, and Instagram Reels, where we highlight the best parts of each episode. If you're not already, make sure to follow us on our socials, which are linked below in the description. And make sure to tune in every other Monday for more episodes. Thanks again for listening. We hope to catch you guys on our next episode of the TnT Podcast. I'll see you guys later.